Okay, so this is Digitales session 2 with my good friend and colleague Amee Karat. Amee, can you give us a quick overview of who you are and what you do here at Digitalent, please?
Well, who am I? It's a very good question. Who are you? Are you you or are you me? Or how does it work? Well, look, it's by day, I am definitely in love with the company I work for and my job, and that's Digitalent. And I feel that I live and breathe the core values of Digitalent. I enjoy being a recruiter, and I love helping people in life. I've started recruitment probably about 11 years ago when I fell into it, like we all did.
Like we all do, yeah.
I finished diploma of network engineering, gave that diploma to my dad and said, Dad, this is for you. I'm going traveling. Went abroad, studied linguistics, came back. Long story short, didn't like tech, as in to tinker with, didn't like
Yeah.
networking. So I got into recruitment. Because of the people aspect. I just enjoyed helping people, changing lives, and being a useful member to society. Recruiters do help people, and we're not all about me. We really genuinely like to change lives and make lives better. And I've been doing that, I believe, for 11 years now. And I've joined Digitalent for about a year and just over a year.
Yeah.
I've always been a kind of infrastructure-y type recruiter. I've always done I started in infrastructure and then worked into cybersecurity. And now recently I've been doing a lot in DevOps, DevSecOps and development.
Mm-hmm.
It just naturally transitioned, and it was just quite organic. So like I said, I live and breathe and I love it. And by night, I do a passion of mine, which is horseback archery. I'm a professional. I can call myself a professional because I get paid to do it, and I compete on an international level. And
Which is what the bow is behind you, mate. It's not.
exactly.
It could be horns, but it's not horns.
Like
it's bow.
But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I'm a dad. I'm a proud dad, husband, father, son. Family is very important to me. Being true to yourself and being true to others is very important to me as well. So that's kind of a tour of who I am.
Awesome. And just so for everyone listening and watching, depending on where they are, your role is that of principal consultant.
Yes. Yeah. So I
Cool.
360 basically.
Yeah. Okay. So you sort of deal with the client side, and you also obviously source the roles and sort of deliver on recruitment projects and stuff like that.
Exactly. So I'll basically speak to the client, get the difficult task of understanding what they really need, because a lot of people have wish lists, and sometimes we have to narrow those down, or sometimes we have to expand them. So that's one part of my jobs, and also negotiating with the candidate about the biggest decision in their life. Top 3 decisions is getting married, finding a house, buying a house, changing jobs. It's huge. So yeah, it's very consultative, and that's what I really enjoy about it.
Good stuff. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Because I mean, just to from my perspective, reiterate the reason why we do Digitales. I mentioned this in the first session when I spoke briefly to Dylan, but we're a completely distributed team. We spend our lives catching up with each other and clients and candidates on video a lot of the time. Even pre-COVID, we were completely distributed, even though it was unusual before COVID kicked in. Now it's the norm, which is that everyone's basically copying the Digitalent distributed team model. But yeah, so for that reason, we spend a lot of time obviously catching up with each other on video calls, and the idea behind it is to record some of these sessions in its natural environment, not staged. We would normally call this a sort of debrief, if you like, in terms of talking about recent projects, seeing what we can learn from it and seeing what we can sort of take from it into new client projects that are happening now and in the future, basically. So what are we going to talk about today, mate?
Well, we're going to talk about geographic location and how that is increasingly becoming less relevant in our, in what we're doing. Recent, obviously recent placement with a fintech client. I remember when you first told me, oh, there's a potential role coming up, and I said, oh, great, yeah, okay, where is it? What's going on? And he goes, oh, but mate, it's in Cyprus. And I went, oh, I can't work in Cyprus. It's just not. I've never worked outside of Sydney, really. That's before I joined Digitalent, and wow, and the quickest turnaround ever. It was very quick to turn around. It was very, very fluid, and I actually enjoyed working out of hours.
Yeah,
which was really weird.
Yeah.
That response rate and the responses coming out overnight and working late and early actually was refreshing.
So paint the picture for us, for anyone who's listening in. So the a little bit about the client, like the hiring manager, where he's based, and why the role why they were searching for that role in such a far away location from hiring manager, basically.
The client is obviously a fintech. They acquired another fintech without disclosing too much information, but essentially they've got offices in the UK, another country in Europe, and Cyprus, as well as Sydney, Melbourne. So the client is based, our contact's based in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And he was really struggling with the role, a cybersec developer role in Cyprus, because most of the development team, about 40 engineers, are based in a place in Cyprus that's not so crash hot and not so popular in the tech market, because it doesn't have a seafront, the weather isn't as good, and the city is not as developed.
Because Cyprus is obviously a super small place in terms of like tech talent, but I mean, when you go deep into like things like DevOps and some of those types of sort of like security aspects, especially with regards to like financial services, fintech experience, the pool was like small, isn't it? Like, and that's why they were initially struggling with trying to hire it themselves. Had the hiring manager tried to hire it himself initially?
Initially, it was through HR. They tried, but they came up with nothing. And he reached out to, I think he reached out to yourself, and then obviously the introduction happened, and basically, I think it took 2.5 weeks from brief to offer. And I think it would have taken less if it wasn't just for the few delays in the time zone. I honestly think it was a very smooth and easy. I was very surprised at how easy and smooth the process went. And sometimes for you to realize that you can actually do this, you be thrown in the deep end. There's no way.
From the client's perspective, then, when we were actually first given the brief, what was your first thing? Like, what did you do with the client first of all, and how did you approach them about the process, given that there was such a geographical spread involved?
Well, I had to do my own research because there's, being Cyprus, there are geopolitical issues at hand as well between Turkey and I was thinking straight away, try and think outside of the box, go outside of Cyprus. What if I don't find people in that location? What if I have to work from home? Do you have that option? Do you have I was trying to think as broad as I could.
So establishing some sort of compromises straight away because you knew the difficulties behind the client.
It was a DevSecOps role, right? DevSecOps is not easy. It is a very hard niche market, And there's a lot of people
It's hard,
saying
it's hard enough in Sydney. It's hard enough in Sydney, and Melbourne, and London, to be honest. Right? Never mind going to somewhere like Cyprus. Trying to unearth talent in that arena. It's scarce everywhere, I think. So
totally, and these candidates are in high demand. I think what the client had going for them is the fact that they were small-ish, and that the environment offered a lot of good experience.
yeah,
In that way, I was able to sell that role really effectively. And I remember, I speak to a lot of junior guys trying to break into cyber, or junior guys trying to break into the right company, because a lot of people trust you. When it comes to recommending, who do you join? Do you join a big Fujitsu or a big name, big brand, or do you join a small brand with a good manager?
yeah.
And I always recommend people join the small brand with a good manager over the big brand, because in a big brand, you can't help it. You're going to become a number.
Siloed. It's very
Exactly,
siloed.
straight away. And in a small brand, the manager is going to be usually, have his plate full, and your chunk of work that you can get your teeth stuck into is going to be a lot more juicy, a lot more better.
Yeah.
So, and of course, your experience is going to grow, and you're going to gain a lot more from that than you will ever in a large organization. So I think when you're talking to DevSecOps guys, they're already smart.
Yeah.
There's no point me trying to sell, or trying to, reinvent the wheel for them. It's just about giving them the reality, and giving them the power to choose, and just not being too pushy. These acknowledging their intelligence and acknowledging the fact that they're very informed goes a long way, than trying to manipulate people. Just being very honest. I think that helped me a lot in
And
my
how
process.
did the client what was their approach in terms of like interview process given
Right.
that?
Yeah. So basically, the interview process was initially with us. I did the first level interview process. I had my technical questions. The client was awesome because he briefed me really well on the technologies, what he needed. He was very articulate, and he was able to. He knew what he wanted. You know what I mean? So half of the battle is the client not knowing what they want.
Yeah.
This guy knew exactly what he wanted, and it made it hard, but it also made it easy at the same time, because when you make up your mind, you know what you want. It's a lot easier to go in and be realistic about it. So because he gave me a good brief, I obviously searched. The interview process was initially with me, video interview.
Where did you get the questions from? Did he supply the questions?
We worked them together.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Worked them together. I put one or two, and he basically, because I worked roles like this before. We get the sort of Linuxy type questions that they need to be asked. And of course, then you go into compliance, you go into the OSI model, you go into threat analysis and the different sort of questions that they ask. But basically, I love to ask at the end of every interview, and this is something I learned early on in my recruitment career, is the question when you ask people, what's not on your CV that you want to tell me something about you that's not on your CV. A lot of people neglect people for being people and who they are, and that really comes out. And I think that question is very important in any interview, that people should know who you are. So the interview process was very, very 3-stage process, very simple. First one with myself. Second one.
How did that work? The first stage one, if you tell people how that would normally.
Basically, at the time, So at the time, we basically video interview and record it's synergy basically. We record the video interview. There's time-stamped questions, and we send that together with the CV and the interview. So, for example, there's 6 questions, and those 6 questions are all time-stamped. There's a little video, and the client gets a package in a link. Basically, clicks on the link. The shortlist comes up of 3 CVs, 3 candidates, pre-recorded, 6 questions. Me asking them pretty much like you and I are talking right now, with the CV right on the right side, and they can view the CV. And that's basically their first interaction with the candidate. The second stage is video call with the client, And the third stage was basically going in to meet the team in Cyprus.
In Cyprus, basically, yeah.
And
That's a good way of going about it. I think it works quite well, actually, in that type of scenario as well, especially when the hiring manager's sometimes in either a different city or a different location, or in this instant, a really, quite dramatic time zone shift as well. And when you've got the physical team based in Cyprus, the hiring manager based in Melbourne, as well, and also probably some other decision makers based in Melbourne, like probably CTO or someone CIO equivalent. The reason why we do that video interview in that format is we take the questions from the client, so we're not making it up on the spot. Like, it's got to be relevant, obviously, and then we effectively take over the first stage of the interview process on behalf of the client to try and save them time. That's the gist of it, isn't it? It's one of those where you sort of like, you're trying to give them a fly in the wall representation of how the candidate communicates, what their personality is like, how they might fit into the team. And it's way more powerful and much more of a time saving doing it that way than, for instance, someone in Cyprus giving them a telephone interview, one person, and then it's that person's job to try and succinctly and articulately communicate exactly what that person is like to the manager in Melbourne or whatever. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do, even if you've met the candidate in person. If you then have to relay exactly, if you met a candidate in person in Sydney and you had to talk me through exactly what they were like, you would do a great job at it, but it's not comparable to a video recording as a fly in the wall, because you can see for yourself. And I think that worked well in that scenario, because the client was able to obviously crack on with his normal job. I know that particular hiring manager has got a young family as well.
Oh yes.
And he wasn't having to put in multiple first stage interviews late at night or super early in the morning because of the time difference and stuff. He could watch your video recordings as it comes through, and that was, I know from speaking to him afterwards, in terms of his feedback, he absolutely loved that, and that was one of the things that he loved most about it. So I thought, that's the reason why we do. That's the reason why it works so well with those such spread out type roles.
You'd still be, we do, senior appointments, especially because senior appointments, you often, the decision makers, for example, I'm now working on one where the decision makers in the US.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, a video goes a long way. When you have to get sign off from the, CISO has to get a sign off from CIO, and if there's a video involved, you send him a link. You can just click on that link and have a look.
Exactly. It's powerful, and it actually works really well from the candidate's perspective as well, because it keeps the interview process succinct as well. So it keeps it to a minimum amount of time. Whereas when you have really, really senior people involved from different country locations or different regional locations, even, especially when there's that, like I said, that added complexity of a time zone shift. Those people are super, super busy, and trying to get the time in their diary, even if it's for half an hour or an hour, for them to effectively go over a lot of the time what the initial interviewer has already done. So you're revisiting a lot of the same stuff. It's hard for the candidate because there's an elapsed time involved there, and that's hard for them because they might be out. Some candidates are obviously out of work and they need to get a job quickly. They might have multiple opportunities on that they're sizing up at any one time, and this one they really, really like and they want to see it all the way through before making a decision. So they want to have all the sort of the benefit of making a decision quickly and seeing everything through in as quick a time as possible. But it works just as well. What I'm trying to say is it works just as well for the client as it does for the candidate. And it's,
I was going to say, because if you're a manager trying to sell something or trying to get something approved, and then you have to articulate the candidate, it's a lot easier for us to, with Synergy, all they have to do is forward that interview, because that interview sells itself. The candidate sells itself in that process. which makes his job 10 times easier. He doesn't have to beg. He does, not that they have to beg, but it makes it just so much more easier.
I mean, we've been using this service now for what, 2.5 years, I think we've, and now we've given it a product name. It's now called Synergy, to make it, easy for us to, sort of essentially package it up to show the client. And there's been so many times, actually, even from a personal perspective, where I've gone down this exact process with a client. And it's really interesting when you look back retrospectively and you analyse the types of candidates that have actually made it all the way through the process, who have been made an offer, because it doesn't actually. It's quite surprising the way that it all pans out. So to give you an example, sometimes you have candidates who come across amazingly well over the phone, and you think, like, personality wise, and you just have a really good feeling about them, and then you send them across to the client, they line up a video interview, and it doesn't go anywhere, and you sort of left scratching your head a little bit. And then conversely, and that might be because the personality that comes through on the video, they know the I suppose the personalities that are involved in the team. They know who they might work well with and who they might not work well with, based on their communication skills or the answers to the question, everything like that. You can't get that from a phone call. It's pretty much impossible to do that. And then the other side of that coin, what I've found is that you have people who don't come across actually that well on a phone interview, and who, if that was the first stage of the interview process, they would probably be rejected because they're maybe a little bit quiet. I had one candidate who was so quiet on the phone, and I thought, his CV looked great, and he was just really, really reserved on the phone. He was giving yes, no answers a lot of the time, and it was hard to get the information out of him. I said to myself, I'll jump on a video with the candidate. And as soon as I saw him, I realised straight away it's because the candidate was a really smiley person. He couldn't help but smile. So when he was talking, he was smiling, but that was obviously what I couldn't tell that obviously from the phone interview. But I knew the personality of the hiring manager, and I thought they would really get on with that person because he's quite a happy, outgoing person, type of personality. And that led me to submit him, and he ended up getting the job because and not because of that, but it's a major kind of contributing factor. So it works, but it works both ways, and it's actually a really interesting thing, because I think it gives more opportunities to the candidate as well to sort of impress. In many ways, and it obviously gives more opportunity for the client, like I said, to sort of save that time, and only for them to give up their really valuable time to meet with candidates who they're already interested in, effectively. So it's a very interesting thing to go through, really, looking back on it. So
very true, very true. I was chatting to another client. I don't know if I told you. They're growing in Canada and the US, but Canada was quite interesting because we explored the fact of working a role in Toronto,
right?
And I just feel so much more comfortable. Obviously having worked roles, now we've got roles. We worked in Hong Kong, we've worked in Europe, so now we've covered that continent. Australia, we've covered that. That, why not get America's? Okay, if I can do Europe, then it's,
Yeah, and I think if you have the right technology in place, which we do, and the right process in place, and it's tried and tested, we've gone through the sort of learnings behind it, and we know what to look out for, things to avoid, and which we're kind of battle hardened in the sort of video interview process, and effectively taking over that first stage. It really means that a couple of things, that the actual the location of the role versus our location and the candidates and the hiring manager's location are actually irrelevant. it doesn't mean that our service levels will drop any in any way. It really doesn't. And it's not one thing to remember as well, which we haven't talked about, is how you actually source the candidate. So tell us how you actually went about that, because I think that links to a lot to what we're talking about here.
Obviously, it's a new market for me, right? So Cyprus, I started almost from zero. I do have a decent global network. Connecting to a few people globally, you're immediately second connection to most other people. I tend, I'm close to 20,000 connections on my LinkedIn. So that's not a, most people are second level connections, but obviously LinkedIn was a major help for me and was the main tool for me to use. My search was every single, because it was a small market in that particular city. But boiled down to a good, 60 candidates.
Yeah.
From those 60, it became, close to 30 odd who are, someone that I would want to connect with. I ended up, because I'm now contacting them from Australia, I'm not a local recruiter, I'm not a European recruiter. That's actually one thing that most people want to move to Australia, and they're actually, Australians have a very good international name. Yeah. So when I connect with someone, people like to connect to Aussies, So Australia, okay, I've never got bang straight away. I did not get any kind of, I don't know this person. So it was very, very quick and easy to connect with people. After that, I immediately sent people a video message. I didn't want to just come across cold, or, I wanted to have that first impression. Wow. And I did that, and everybody was commenting on my Aussie accent. Yeah. Everybody was like, I love your accent, and etc. Going off on that. And but
just to clarify though, that was the way that you approached the video message was individual, wasn't it? It wasn't just
got an individual voice message with their name written like this, and I would look. Cybersecurity people are very careful about clicking on links.
Yeah, so for obvious reasons. Yeah,
I had to write the name, smiley face, and it's okay. The link is safe. And then they were like telling me, mate, that's what a hacker would do, and they would write link is safe. So I click on it. I said, bro, you are so paranoid. It's military grade paranoia. It's not even, it's professional paranoia. Yeah. So it was really fun having those conversations, and I had to thank every single one of them for actually trusting me enough to click on the link, to watch the video, and the personal message. And it went a long way, because immediately those candidates were captured. Literally, they were captured, and I had a level of trust that you wouldn't get from a message, especially from people that are paranoid for a living. They're paid to think that everyone's against you. They're literally paid to think everyone's the enemy. Anyone's the, So it was very hard to get through to these people. Mm-hmm. And then once you're through, obviously, I must have sent at least a good 30 captures, at least, to individual candidates that were right for the market. Because it's a small market, we got talking. A few interviews later, people were recommending their mates. Obviously, there was a trust and report immediately. I stumbled across 3 great candidates in this process. The one that got the job actually was one of the people I captured. He wasn't from the networks.
Explain what captures, just the name of the video message.
I forgot. So
you can actually send someone in a balaclava and a van to.
It's definitely. A capture is basically, I send them I record a video basically like this. Hi, Chris. And then I explain, well, thank you for connecting, etc. And the reason why I'm reaching out via video is to save a phone call, right? People don't want to don't want to be interrupted in their day. So they can watch the video on the way home or to work, which is really handy, and they can listen to it. They don't have to read it. The other thing is, basically I record that, and I send it via LinkedIn or email to them, so that when they see it, they see a thumbnail picture of me holding
Yes,
this,
it's
and they see this
personalised and it's not just
every time.
cut and paste. I think the recruitment industry is guilty a lot of the time of having like,
Mass
they
mailing,
write
mass.
out like a one paragraph thing, like one size fits all type message, and they'll send it out via, LinkedIn recruiter license, to 100 candidates and hope that 10 people get back to them. And out of those 10, you might end up with a couple of candidates to send across. This is a much more targeted, personalized, and authentic way of actually representing the client's business. Because I'm conscious of that all the time, that we are the first interaction that the candidate will have with the employer's brand. And I think if you start off doing it, in a really surprising and authentic way, like you said, it goes a long way. It's not just a vanilla email that could be relatable, but it might not be, and it's sort of, it's a lot of ambiguity in there. It's actually, hey, Amee, it's this is actually for
I'll tell you
you.
what, if you were to compare me, I used to work for big agencies, some of the biggest, and that was the way that they recruited. LinkedIn, massive fees, spray and pray, right? That you were literally a machine gunner, right?
Yeah.
When I got to work with this product, I literally felt like a sniper. I felt it was one shot, one kill. It was like bang, and every single one went down. It was just amazing. It was game changer.
Yeah.
I literally felt that I could not fail. It was amazing. So I interviewed this guy. Another thing that was really cool about this is I love using WhatsApp, and I use it for everything. And everyone uses WhatsApp internationally. So we set up a lot of, back and forths with WhatsApp, and not just LinkedIn, because WhatsApp was a lot quicker for me. The messaging was instantaneous. So WhatsApp played a big role going back and forth. And I don't know why, but when people message on WhatsApp, it's a lot more personal.
Yeah.
It's just the guards down. And on LinkedIn, people are always, making sure that the caps is on, and the capital letters are right, and you don't write everything in quickly. People reread. It's almost like an email. So back and forth with WhatsApp was great on an international level, because everybody had WhatsApp. But it was very smooth, and I was surprised. I think I could not have done it if I didn't have this video capture tool that we use. There's no way that I would have had that success rate, even though I'm a charming Australian with all that stuff. I think the massive key to that was obviously the synergy model, but my ability to reach out into people was massive.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, and that's sometimes the difference as well with those niche roles, like niche skills, because Cyprus is obviously different because it's a smaller market, but for what we do in the UK with like London market or places like New York or even Sydney and Melbourne, for example, there are a lot of recruiters hunting for the same and end clients, internal recruitment teams, everything. There's a lot of noise on LinkedIn. Sometimes when I speak to candidates, they're like, and I send them one of those video messages, they're like, I get 60 messages, emails, LinkedIn mails a day from recruiters. Happens a lot in London because it's such a saturated market with recruitment agencies, and obviously it's a huge city in itself. What, like 8 or 9 million people or something just in London, and they always say to me when I send a video message, you cut right through the noise, because I hadn't seen anything like that before. And it sort of makes you stand out when, which is awesome for the client, because out of those 60 messages, yours stands out straight away. And it's the first thing, it's just an intriguing thing to land in your inbox when you see someone. I've got my my little whiteboard somewhere down there as well. And, you see the whiteboard and it's got your name written on it. And I think it's a nice surprise for a lot of candidates, because they know you're actually taking the time to message them as an individual and not like I said, not just another recruiter sending a hopeful message to like 100 type, 100 candidates. So no, that's awesome.
The other thing is that, the one thing is reaching out, but also when you're giving feedback, when you're, relaying a message that you can't write, it helps put the human in the message.
Yeah, tone. I think tone's really, really important with stuff like that, because people can read what you're saying in an email or even a WhatsApp or a text message or whatever. They can read the tone in the wrong way, depending on how you write it, and what's going on in their day. They might have just come out of a real stressful meeting, or like had an argument with a partner or something, and they read this and they maybe jump to the wrong conclusions. There's no jumping to the wrong conclusions most of the time with a video message, because it's a human being interaction, basic level of communication. You can see the whites of their eyes and how their tone is and how they're actually naturally communicating. So I think it just helps to build that relationship, I think, with people. But like you mentioned a minute ago, so that saving time is massively important as well for the candidate, because instead of ringing them every 2 minutes, which is probably what we used to do, like 10
Oh no.
Yeah. They're running into a meeting room and you're trying to talk to people and stuff like that. At least with that, they can watch it when they've got time. They can rewatch it as well. And it's funny because we get actually a lot of referrals from candidates, maybe even when we reach out to candidates about a specific role, they might not be available or interested at that moment in time, but they're so impressed with how we've reached out that they quite often will send that capture video message to their friend and say, hey, look at this recruiter, the way that isn't this good, and they'll refer someone else on who is looking, and that leads to things for our clients.
It's a landscape. Yeah, it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, definitely. Sure. But no, awesome. So yeah, well, so obviously with it, let's wrap it up. We'll try and keep it sensible in terms of the time for this. So so obviously that the candidate was went all through the process. They were offered. Everything went well in terms of like starting and stuff. I assume they're still at the company, are they?
Yes, yes, they are. And look, it was a difficult one. Not difficult because the candidate was smart about it. The client, his employer tried to keep him. They did their best to counter offer because he was obviously worth. But he was smart enough not to take it, and he knew what he wanted. So the counter offer came.
Yeah, moving for the right
exactly.
reason.
He knew exactly what he wanted, and he wasn't going to be swayed. He moved. He started after obviously a holiday, and the rest is history. He's doing a phenomenal job where he is at the moment, and he's making a major impact. Now he's got a junior under him, which is really cool. Part of the team, so the team's growing, and I think they are one of the better teams in that organization in terms of the team that everybody looks up to. Is them. So it's really awesome.
That's good. Perfect. Well, thanks very much for going through that, Amee. Much appreciated. And yeah, we'll get you back on Digitals soon to talk about something similar. But thanks very much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you. You're welcome.